Welcome back to Talk of the Town. I'm your host, Steve Noxon, and I'm joined now by State Senator Rob Sampson. Senator Sampson, which areas do you represent there in the 16th District?
Good afternoon, Steve. Thanks for having me on. Enjoying your show very much today.
Okay.
I represent the towns of Wolcott, Southington, and Prospect. I also have a portion of Cheshire and the east end of Waterbury.
All right. And those are interesting areas that you're representing because they're similar in some ways, but they're really different in a lot of other different ways, aren't they?
Yes, it is a diverse electorate. There's no question about that, which is one of the reasons why I am a staunch advocate of local control, particularly when it comes to things like education. I want to see the Wolcott, Cheshire, and Prospect school districts do their own thing. I want to see the Waterbury school district do their own thing because they're nothing alike. And if you try and make one-size-fits-all policies, you're just going to create more problems.
Well, that's kind of been the problem we have had here over the last 8-9 months, where every policy that has been coming out under the the governor's executive orders, the governor's executive orders have been a one-size-fits-all solution, haven't they?
Yes. Oh, yes. And there have been numerous executive orders, and many of them well beyond the scope of his authority. And folks that are following me know that I have been very outspoken about that. I think he's up to somewhere around 77 or 78 executive orders. And he's supposed to be limited, number one, in time. He was supposed to get no more than 6 months. And he's also supposed to be limited in scope, which is to modify existing statutes for public health purposes. And I could do a laundry list for you of things that are well beyond that, not the least of which is the determination of which businesses are essential and non-essential, which is a major sticking point with me because I think he did tremendous damage to our economy and many small business owners when he decided, well, liquor stores can be open, Target can be open, but Susie's dress shop right next door, who could certainly follow the same protocol, she's got to be closed. That's just ridiculous. And I can give you countless examples, even in his press conferences where he came forward and people asked him about what businesses might be essential, and he just dismissed them out of hand arbitrarily. Clearly no reliance on science or public health, just what he felt was essential or not essential. And to me, that is a major, major problem. The United States of America is the United States of America precisely because we did not want the rule of one man arbitrarily deciding things day to day. We wanted the rule of law deciding by representatives of the people.
Now, there's been a lot of talk by a lot of candidates in this race, and we've had a few of them on here on the show to talk about them and why they feel they're better choices for some of these positions. And one topic that comes up quite often is that they're so divided in Hartford right now, and that, you know, people would work to try to bring people together across the divide and work together to find solutions. Do you feel that that's the situation in Hartford right now?
Well, I think that, you know, people make a lot of hay about certain things, and rightly so. I would put it this way, Steve. I would say, imagine this. I don't think your listeners would probably be aware that I think 75, maybe 76, 77% of legislation passes the Connecticut General Assembly unanimously. So that's clear evidence that the parties do work together to do a great many things. And in fact, I've been in office going on 10 years, 4 terms in the House and my first in the Senate. And I've passed over 130 bills into law by working with colleagues in both parties on a lot of things, because there is common ground on many issues. But where there is not common ground, which is the overall direction of our state, particularly when it comes to finances, there is no common ground. I mean, where are you going to find it? I want no more taxes. They want more taxes. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Give in and say some taxes? I'm not going to do that. Many, many issues are like that. My good friend Senator Joe Markley used to say all the time, what if we were lost in the woods and we had to pick a direction to survive? And I wanted to go east and you wanted to go west. How do you compromise? Sometimes there's just no compromising because we have a different value system. And I think that's okay. And if we put that in front of the voters and let them make the choice about which direction to go, that's how politics is supposed to be done. If we all agreed on everything, there's no point in even having a legislature. The problem is when people distort each other's records or they get nasty about things, and there's never room for that.
Now, you say this is your first term as senator. You were previously a representative. Can you give us some idea? First of all, it's been obviously very difficult for you as being a member of the minority party to really have a say at the table when it comes to things like budgets and stuff like that. How would you work to change that and try to get to the table?
Well, my responsibility in the state legislature, it falls in a lot of areas, and you do the best that you can with what you are given. I serve on 3 distinct legislative committees, the Government Administration and Elections Committee, and I'm happy to report that I've been able to make many new changes in policies and affect things that have improved our state as far as government contracts, election laws, and so forth. I also serve on the Judiciary Committee, where we deal with the real tough issues of the day, like gun laws and things like that. And I serve what is the other committee I serve on? Finance, Revenue, and Bonding, where I am the voice of opposition. You know, Steve, I guess it's a couple of different things. When you serve in public office, you can use your office as a tool to teach, to educate, to spread the word, to point out the opposing view. And I think that's very, very important, that we need people in the opposition party, which the Republicans are today. And as you know, I've probably been the most outspoken voice in the legislature from the minority party in either chamber for the last 10 years. But I'm performing a service because I'm letting the voters know what the new direction would be if they put Republicans in charge. You said something funny, which I wanted to get back to, which is it must be tough to get a seat at the table regarding the budget from the minority. I will tell you that no one has a seat at the table for the budget. The budget is determined by 3 or 4 people, and that is the governor and the Democrat leaders. The individual legislators have almost no say in what happens in the state budget, and that is a huge problem no matter what party you serve in.
I couldn't argue with you there, because certainly the budgets that have been implemented over the last few years have not addressed the overwhelming problems that are still facing us here in Connecticut. And we're still looking for some sort of quick fix to handle this that's not going to be painful. And I just don't – do you think that there's a way to meet those 2 needs, fix this without it being painful?
Well, it depends on painful to whom is the question. The first thing I would say about it is I don't believe that the Democrats, I don't believe that Governor Lamont, I don't believe that the majority leader, Matt Ritter, believe that Connecticut has a problem. I think they're perfectly content with the way Connecticut is going. They maintain their majorities by taxing mostly small towns, but certainly hardworking middle-class people, and then using that money to expand not only the state government, to create people that are relying on the Democrats staying in power for their paychecks, and expanding entitlements. And also things that are entitlements may or may not be valuable depending on how they're used or abused. But nonprofit agencies, they become to rely on the Democrats being in power, or at least they have that perception. And this is basically the definition of the Democrat machine. This is how they're able to continue to grow and prosper in this state. The problem is that they are growing and prospering at the expense of the average taxpayer who is getting killed. And the policies that they're making are forcing people from this state. And they seem okay with that because mostly the people that are leaving are the productive members that would be voting Republican. And so far it hasn't caught up with them. But I think it will.
So we're facing some major problems here as far as budget deficits this year, depending on whether you believe the projections of the administration about it coming down. But whatever it is, the numbers are huge and just getting huger in the couple of out years. How do you see, or what do you have any ideas, any initiatives that you might promote to address that and rein the size of our government in?
Well, I mean, over the last 10 years, I've voted on, I think, 5 budgets, and I have voted no, ultimately, on the state budgets that have become the law of the land. And the reason why is that every one of them was irresponsible. Every one of them was unbalanced. They may have been balanced on paper for some period of time, but every one of them, when the vote was cast, there was a projection to say that at the end of that budget cycle, before the beginning of the very next budget, there would be a deficit. It's the most irresponsible way you could possibly do anything. That's like buying a home you can't afford, or going out and making a purchase that you know that you don't have the money for. And that is exactly what the state of Connecticut does. The problem is that elected officials are elected for only short periods of time, so they're only worried about the immediate solution. How do I get past the next 2 years? And the way they do that often is by borrowing against the future. The Democrat Party, it kills me because they seem to have a tremendous amount of support from young people, which they have achieved through identity politics and basically distorting the Republican position on freedom, liberty, gay rights, and so forth. But what young people should really be aware of is that the Democrat Party is bankrupting their future. They are going to be paying for all of these bills that are being created now because the Democrats fail to budget in a way where we're actually paying as we go. And they're just borrowing more and more. I heard you talking earlier about the CBAC agreement. It was extended by Governor Malloy on his way out the door, and that's because I think the Democrats thought they might not be victorious in 2018. So as a result, he extended the CBAC agreement well beyond his time of service into the future. I mean, that's the most irresponsible thing you can do. And I'm sorry, I'm talking long here.
No, we've talked about that a lot too, because I've just never understood how a governor can tie the hands of future legislators like that. But nobody seemed to really be all that concerned about it, and just sort of shrugged their shoulders. But
I'm concerned, and I did speak up about it, and I made a big mistake back in the day, and I'm sure I was on your show talking about it.
Probably. The other issue that we've got here too is because of these deficits, we're probably looking at tax increases, because I just don't see any will from anybody in the majority party to kind of reduce the size of government, which is going to put an additional burden on business here in the state, which is going to just continue this cycle that we're in, where businesses just can't afford to live here and do business here. How would you? What sort of ideas would you bring to the table, or do you bring to the table to sort of stop that vicious cycle?
Yeah, the only solution, Steve, is to actually own up to the fact that we cannot continue on the path that we are on. We cannot raise taxes for the reasons you specified. If we raise taxes, we are only going to make our financial future even worse. The solution is to cut spending. And I carry around with me a list of items to cut spending, and some of them are worth billions of dollars. So the argument that it cannot be done is not true. It's going to be hard, no question about it. And, the thing is that had people listened to me and the rest of my minority Republican colleagues back in 2011 when Malloy first got elected and passed the largest tax hike in state history, we wouldn't be in this problem now. But they made it worse. And then they came back 2013 and they passed the second largest tax hike in our state history. Also the state, when I say tax hike, I also mean the largest amount of spending. And they can just continue to do that. And in 2019, Ned Lamont's going to be different. Nope. 2019 comes and he doubles down and passes another $1 billion in new taxes. And here we are. It's always very difficult to be in the minority. Say, well, gee, Rob, what would you do to fix it? Well, I wouldn't have voted for any of these things that got us here. We got here incrementally by being irresponsible. And the way to fix it is to start becoming responsible. And that means reducing our spending, making sure we don't raise taxes, because the only solution to Connecticut's long-term problems, Steve, is economic growth. That is the only way. The only way. There is no other solution to pay for the mountains of long-term obligations the state has as far as pension debt and everything else. The only way we can do it is if we actually make Connecticut an attractive place where people want to come here so they can to live, to work, to start a business, or to keep their business here instead of moving away. And retirees, especially state employees who earn these nice pensions after they leave, but then they go retire in South Carolina. I want to keep them here. And the way to do that is to stop taxing them. And one of the things I would say is immediately stop taxing any type of retirement income, teachers, pensions, or Social Security.
I want to kind of switch gears with you here a little bit here, Senator. You are a strong advocate for gun rights. And obviously Connecticut has had a pretty tragic history with issues, including Sandy Hook. And it seems that the state is, again, incrementally, slowly trying to strip gun rights away from gun owners. How would you push back against that?
Well, year after year, the Democrats come to the table with more and more gun control legislation. Make no mistake, their goal is to strip people of their Second Amendment right. Anytime you hear someone say, I stand for the Second Amendment, but know that they don't stand for the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is a pretty all-encompassing statement. It says that the government does not have the right to interfere with your right as an individual citizen to protect yourself. In fact, to me, it may be the most key ingredient to what being an American is. And I say this all the time, and people sometimes laugh about it, but it's the total truth. When this country was founded, the idea was that every single American citizen is a king or queen. Just like the King of England or the King of France, etc., they have the right to own property, which you would not have necessarily had as an English subject. We are citizens, not subjects, and people should have the right to defend themselves in every way. The thing is that in Connecticut, they've passed so much gun control already that they have to go look under the seat cushions to find clever things to do, and which is why we've had these really wonky bills in recent years. Ghost guns. What exactly is a ghost gun? I got the chairman of the Judiciary Committee to admit the giant boulder at the end of my driveway is actually a ghost gun under the definition of the bill, because that's just how silly it is.
And the other part, too, is that they're already illegal, right?
That is correct.
I mean, at the federal level, they're already illegal. Why are we reinventing the wheel?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the definition of a lot of these things are. But they're going after things that make headlines, things that are scary to people that they can put in the minds of voters to say, oh, yes, we're going to go after those scary ghost guns. Well, ghost guns are not a problem. What the problem is illegally obtained firearms in the hands of criminals. That is the problem. That is where violence comes from. That's why people get shot and murdered, mostly in our major cities. What's funny, Steve, is that back in 2013, after Sandy Hook, they passed a lot of gun control legislation, and most of it, I would say, was completely ineffective and more harmful to law-abiding citizens than anything that might stop crime. But one thing they did was good, and that was they instituted something called the Statewide Firearms Trafficking Task Force. And this was basically just implementing a plan that allowed police departments across our state to communicate with one another with the singular focus of getting illegal guns out of the hands of criminals. And it was a very effective program, and they did successfully get a lot of illegal guns off the street. And I think that if it continued, it would have reduced crime. But of course it didn't continue, because after Sandy Hook was not such a big issue anymore, they stopped funding it. It's so funny how that works, isn't it?
It's amazing.
I try year after year after year while we're having the debate about how they're going to ban this or that, which only affects some, middle-aged guy in his garage who's an aficionado of firearms, not some guy who's going to go rob a liquor store. I say, why don't we do something to actually catch the crooks and put some legislation in there to reenact the statewide firearms trafficking task force? And would you believe it? They vote it down every time. It just shows how disingenuous they are when they say that they want to fight, gun violence. What they want to do is they want to impede the rights of citizens, and they make excuses for criminals all the time. And we're witnessing that right now. The number one issue, I think, in this election, outside of COVID and what's going to happen after this year is up and we have to go back to the legislature and they're going to try and raise taxes again, is public safety and crime. Crime is on the rise. There's no question about it. I keep hearing from police officers. I keep hearing from concerned neighbors about car thefts. There were 3 shootings in the town of Wolcott in the last month. I've lived here since 2003. I don't recall another one.
Yeah, it's getting crazy. I mean, there's a report in the Rep Am almost every single day about shots being fired somewhere here in the city of Waterbury, and it just doesn't seem like it's getting any better. Final question for you, sir. The governor of Michigan recently lost the court challenge that, and basically the Supreme Court of Michigan stripped her of all of her executive authority. Have you been watching that case?
I have. It's very similar to Connecticut. The only difference is their court system obviously is a little more on top of the situation and more willing to take action. Because I'm actually party to a lawsuit along with a number of business owners on the issue that I had mentioned earlier, which is the governor's executive order that arbitrarily determined which businesses could stay open. I don't think he had the right to do that. Obviously, I endorse policies that help keep my constituents safe, And I've encouraged people to study the science, follow the doctors, and make their own determinations about what they need to do to avoid the coronavirus. But at the same time, I believe that, we're big boys and girls in America. That's the point of freedom. And that for the most part, unless there is some significant public health reason for some types of businesses, and I can imagine there would be if there's close contact with people, you should let people open their businesses. You should let them make their determination if they can do it safely. And certainly the public health departments in towns can make certain parameters for them, but they should make that choice. And the consumers should make the choice about whether they want to go there or not. They don't need Governor Lamont to tell us what to do. And also, I'll say one other thing about that, too, which is
real quick,
if the state of Connecticut is doing good, and there's a big debate about whether that's actually true or not, but if we are doing good, I don't give any credit to our government. I give credit to my neighbors who've actually done all of the things necessary on their own voluntarily to keep one another safe.